how that whole thing kind of came about.
So currently playing in the Spanish EBA is the league title. So we're the 4th division in Spain. I'm playing for a club called Club Baloncesto Tormes in the city of Salamanca in Spain. So very fortunate to be here, and actually really fortunate to be able to be playing like sports right now because because of everything that's going on. So it's like a really fortunate situation I'm in, and yeah, I'm just really happy to be here. It's a bit different because of COVID right now, so we're not allowed to have fans at our games or anything like that, and it's very almost kind of like you're in your own individual bubble with your team. But yeah, it's still very fortunate to be able to play, and really happy to be able to continue to play basketball and at the professional level too.
Yeah, for sure. That time zone obviously can be pretty crazy. So your dad, they get to go on and check out some of the games and stuff.
Yeah, whenever we have a nighttime game, so say we play at 7 p.m., which would be like right now, which is 8 a.m. Hawaii time, they can kind of log in, and that's when about half of our games are. And the other games though will be at like noon maybe, and so those games they can't really watch. So it's about 1 a.m. Hawaii time, so yeah, they're usually in bed by then.
Yeah, I guess it must have been pretty cool for your dad them to be able to obviously watch you through your obviously your high school career, and I'm sure they checked out a bunch of your games at Hilo, but I think you've like I said, you've been playing. I've been watching you be able to play for a long time. I remember like the early days. I got some.
Well, I remember when you guys. Yeah, I remember when you guys first kind of started out. Actually, I think was right when I was like maybe my sophomore year of high school. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's some of the. I think we used to stream a few games back then and stuff, and I think you wore number like right there. You wore number 5 back then.
Yeah.
And then you switched over to the 24 a little later on. But how were those? How was sort of coming along in that Kaleheo program? I think you.
Well, that was. Oh, sorry, I cut you off. What was that?
No, go for it.
Yeah, no, that was kind of like everything in terms of becoming a player. That was where I learned pretty much everything that I could about basketball. I was really fortunate to play for Coach Alika Smith. He's like a great basketball mind, and I learned a lot there. And I really enjoyed playing there, especially because being from Kailua, so Kaleheo was like 5 minutes away from my house. I always grew up watching Kaleheo basketball. My dad played there, a lot of my family members and everything. So being able to play there, and then when I was there too, it was kind of like a resurgence, I guess you could call it, in the program. They kind of dropped down towards D2, I think 2 or 3 years before I had gotten there, and then it just gone back up when I got there. And so I had a lot of pride being able to play there and wear that uniform and try to win some state championships, which we were able to do.
Yeah, speaking of that, so I think that the first year you were there, right, is the Josh Coe year, I think, was it? I don't think you really played a whole lot in that, on that, as far as like maybe on the court minutes necessarily, but I think that gave you.
The thing with that team was I was kind of like a background guy. I started every game though, and I played pretty much crunch time for every single game. But my role was very much like just let these guys do what they're gonna do and just play defense, don't mess up, and if you get in trouble, give them the ball, and they'll take care of it.
So but in that senior year especially, I think a lot of that changed. I think for you, and obviously you had a really talented guy to sort of be there for some of that scoring punching in Taylor Gilmore, and a bunch of other guys, obviously Alex McLeod and stuff we could touch on. But I think you guys had a lot of really tough battles. Fuku's always had a nice program, but that year in particular, they had those Twin Towers and a bunch of guys. Talk about those battles that you guys had with Fuku over the course of that season.
Oh, they were loaded, man. They were a huge team. They were huge by kind of any standards, and then especially in Hawaii where you don't really get a ton of guys who are maybe over 6'3", 6'4". And they had Denham Brook, who I played with in college at UHilo. They had Hiram Harris. Samuto was also kind of coming up too. He was just really starting to become, I think, a much better player by then. And then off the bench too, they had like 3 or 4 guys who were all really big. And so especially for us at Colorado, where we were guard heavy, that was like a big challenge for us trying to get. It was like anything that we've never seen before. Playing against them, they exploited us, especially in that. I think that first game, this one right here that you're showing me now, that was like the first game all year where we had been kind of pushed to the test, I think. And we were losing, I think, most of the game. And then down the stretch, we ended up coming back and I think playing around. A lot of that, I think, was just Caleb. Caleb played really well down the stretch, and we got lucky with a few shots here and there too. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. Fuku obviously was, I think one of the, obviously big challenges to you guys in that year. But, I think the 2 losses, or you guys had 3 losses total that season. One of them was McKinley, and the other was, I believe, Farrington, right? In, I think, the OIA championship. But anyway, Farrington obviously also was, there's Alec McLeod right there. But, obviously,
yeah, A-Mac.
Obviously he, Farrington was another, was there a lot of depth, I guess, or at least, I guess the level of talent and ability that you guys had in the OIA East? I mean, was it as high as it's probably been in a lot of years that year?
Yeah, definitely. It was a year where there was, at the top, there was I think the whole season, everybody was talking about us and Kahuku as kind of like the 2 most talented teams, maybe probably in the state. And then you had a team like Maunalua was also really talented that year. I remember them. They had Kyrie McRaven. He was a great player too. And then you had a school like Farrington too with Jake Smith and Rainan, and it was like everybody I think was giving us Kalaheo and Kahuku all the attention. And then you had a team like Farrington who just kind of kept playing all year long. And then at the end of the season, they kind of hit their stride right when they really needed it. And they took us definitely by surprise in the OIA semis. That was the only game I think we lost when I was at Kalaheo where we had like our whole team playing. Yeah, right there, that buzzer beater right there broke my heart. And then the following night, and then the following game too, they upset Kahuku also in the same kind of fashion. They had a solid group of maybe 6 or 7 guys that they just kept rotating, and they find a really good combination, and they took it away from everybody pretty much.
Yeah, obviously, I think, is it pretty fair to say that OIA East, just having to face all those teams, a lot of times in a lot of seasons, I think, the OIA doesn't really get prepared as well as they would for, what is obviously, very talented teams in the ILH. And, ultimately, I think, that power that you guys sort of had week after week, like you said, I think that basically sort of helped. Did it help a lot in manifesting, when you guys ultimately reached, that final stage, and obviously a really good team with, Hugh Hoagland and those guys in that IOLANI club. Talk about sort of what that state title game sort of meant for you guys and what it really took. There's your dad right there.
Yeah, there's Pops. Yeah, well, this game against IOLANI was another battle too, and it was a game where, like you said, they had Hugh and they had a bunch of really just solid players. And getting to this game was like running through the gauntlet for us because, as I mentioned, we lost to Farrington. So we lose to Farrington, and then we win the 3rd place game in the OIA. Then we have to play, first round we played Maui. They were a good team. They were young. I think the following year they were probably better, but against us they had some talented guys. Then we played number 1 overall seed Punahou, which was like a loaded team too, like any other year. They had Michael Ma'a, JB Cam, Jordan Tanuvasa, Dason, Dason, Watanabe. They had a ton of guys, so we had to beat them in the quarters, then play Kahuku again, and then the cherry on top, you get to play IOLANI, who's probably the best run system in the whole state. They just put guys every year. They put guys in the same positions, and they're successful every year with it. So by the time we had gotten there, it was like, what's next? We've seen everything, and I guess that was kind of almost an advantage because losing to Farrington in the OIA semis was kind of like a big wake-up call for us. And so it was like, you can't play around, can't take anybody lightly anymore. So that kind of put us in a different, I guess like a different mindset going into these games, that there was there's no like room for error anymore.
Yeah, I remember being in that gym, and I think like since like I want to say maybe this year in particular, the crowd I remember was pretty raucous in that game, and I think there's still obviously been some really good basketballs in played, but I think the level of interest was as high as I can remember during sort of that time span. I think it was a great atmosphere obviously for you guys. I think after you guys left, after KALEB and you sort of graduated, that torch sort of got passed on to like Captain and some of those guys, and I think they did a pretty good job of sort of carrying on that. But I think like really that team in particular that you guys had that year was pretty I think pretty special group, and I think like like you said, you faced a lot of different teams, right? Like the bigs for Kahuku, and obviously, top to bottom, Punahou and IOLANI, and I think like what do you guys sort of attribute that success? Was it chemistry? Was it a lot come down to coaching? Like, what do you sort of credit for the success you guys had in that season?
A combination of things. Definitely, like you said, coaching is a really big thing. I think when playing for Alika, you don't have room to kind of, I guess you'd say, dip your toe in the water. You basically, if you want to play for him, you have to be all in. And that group right there, everybody in there was fully in, fully bought in. And with that, you have chemistry, you've got talent, and then you have to attribute, with talent, you got to work hard. And so every practice for us, because we had all this talent on that team, the great thing about that was your practices on some nights are tougher than your game the following night, because you're playing against guys who all come from good backgrounds. We had, like you said, Captain Whitlock, Ashton Arnold, we had Jalen Smith, who's Alika's son, along with our core group of guys too. And so these are all young guys, and they're not trying to just sit in the back seat either. They're trying to come up and get minutes and everything like that too. So our practices were kind of like a iron sharpens iron kind of thing. And then I think somewhere in there, I think we got a little bit complacent, and that's what kind of led to us falling in the OIA semis to Farrington. And then especially after that too, when that happened, the week leading up to states, those practices were like probably the best practices we had all year, because we kind of had a new fire under us, and our coaching staff too. I think they almost were like, well, we can't let these guys rest anymore. We can't take the foot off the pedal anymore. We got to put this sense of urgency into these kids too. So I think all of those things attributed to it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of that pedigree and what you were able to gain from Kalaheo, obviously it translated for you. I think playing it at University of Hawaii Hilo, and like I was mentioning, we don't really get a whole lot of chances to see you play live, but over the course of a couple of days in December, I think it was last year. Has it been the year before or whatever? But it seems like it's been forever.
It was last year.
It seems it's been forever. But
hard to keep track. Yeah.
Obviously, Julie Nakanishi and those guys at the Hoops in Hawaii Classic, they put together. The first year's field was good. This year's field had a bunch of really. Oh, yeah. Really, really quality teams, and I think talk about sort of it seemed like you're really dialed in that stretch, and I know a lot of guys I think came away pretty impressed with what you were doing. Talk about sort of what went on that during that tournament.
Yeah, well, like you said, dialing in is a big thing for me. It's always way more special when I left Hawaii to go away to college for my first 3 years in Oregon and then California. And then whenever you get to come home, though, is like, that's, you got to put on when you're home, and you have that opportunity. First, you're playing in front of your family and your friends and stuff like that. And then at the same time, you don't want to come out and play in front of a bunch of people from home and be a letdown and say, oh, well, maybe he didn't end up progressing or turning out the way maybe some people thought he would or anything like that. And then, like you said too, this event, the Hoops in Hawaii Classic, was a lot of top teams all across the country for D2. So along with that, there's another opportunity for you to showcase what you have on a bit more of like a national scale. Like right here, we're playing against, I think, Alaska Anchorage, and at that time I believe they were ranked in the West region. There were other teams, I think one from Arkansas who was top 25, another team from Oklahoma who was top 25 in the nation too. So kind of all of those things, it's you get there, and then along with that too, you're playing in the convention center, and it's like this big open area, and then you just have this one small court right there, and it's kind of like it kind of reminds you of playing in front of like a good atmosphere instead of just a typical college gym or like high school gym. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, that was a neat tournament. I'm hoping they can bring that back again. And hopefully once all of this, stuff with the pandemic and stuff comes over, we'll be able to do that. But I think the other one, obviously, was like I said, we were able to watch you play a bunch of times with the when you played with at home at McCabe with against the Silver Swords. I think those obviously were some good games. I think I think they fielded a pretty good team. Talk about sort of
always good.
Talk about sort of as this game in particular. I know it kind of was back and forth. Like I said, you think you guys started a little slow, but I think sort of things really came together for you guys in that second half to a certain extent. Talk about sort of those games that you guys had with Chaminade, at least in that season.
Chaminade, man. Chaminade was, in my time at UH Hilo, they were the only team that I didn't get a win against in the 2 years that I played them. So 4 games in 2 years, and they're the only team that we didn't beat. But yeah, same thing. They're a really good program, and they talent-wise, they're always bringing in the best guys. I think a lot of that has to do with the Maui, and then along with their coach too, Bovaird. He's a really good coach too, and especially from an offensive standpoint, he's somebody that they're always in like the top 10 in the nation for offense and everything like that too. And so my first year at Hilo, they beat us by like 30 the first time we played them, and then the second time we played them up in Hilo, we had made a comeback, and they end up hitting in a buzzer beater against us on our last game of the season on senior night and breaking our hearts. I think that eliminated us from playoffs too, so that was like another thing. And then coming back, we were really hoping to that last game too, the second year, we were really hoping to win and kind of keep our playoff chances alive too. And I think we just kind of fell short. Like you mentioned, we started out slow, and their team with their offensive game, they're always getting good shots, and so it's kind of one of those games where you really just have to keep up with them and see if you can score as many points as they can, and then hopefully in the last 4 minutes you have a chance and you can pull something out in the end. But that was another game too, playing in McCabe, playing at where St. Louis is, and that's a gym that I've been playing in since like intermediate days when I was at IOLANI. So it's always a gym that I'm familiar with and I love playing at. So it was good to be able to play there, but always a bummer when you don't come out with a win too.
Yeah, for sure. So I think like you mentioned, Spain. It's what's that sort of been like? Obviously, it's I'm haven't been there myself, so I can't really speak to what it's like. But
Yeah.
how has that been? Like, is it a cultural adjustment?
Oh, big
What's
time.
it like,
Yeah.
sort of being a professional, and obviously being in a much different country and like cultural, like I said, how has that been an adjustment?
Like you said, from top to bottom, everything's way different. For me, it's the first time that I've been out of the United States, so that's been way different. The biggest thing for me was the language at first. Um, First, the language was brutal because I had taken Spanish in high school and in college. When you're doing that, it's like, okay, you have it written down in front of you. You can say, you have your teacher right there, everything like that. And it's way different versus you talk to somebody in person and they're looking at you, I guess, in the same way that, especially in Hawaii, where we have all these foreigners coming in and you say something to them and they kind of look at you like you don't know like they don't know what you're saying. And then the roles reverse and I'm on the other end of that. And it's like these people are just like, like boom, 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 like saying all these things and I can't even keep up with like the first thing that they've said. So that was the biggest thing. First of all, the food is way different also. Um, they have a lot of like American food here, but you don't have your same brands that you're used to back home. So that's an adjustment too. And then, as you mentioned, the lifestyle of being a professional is something that you kind of get used to playing in college, where you have like your set schedule. But a lot of it too is way more about your personal discipline that you have. So it's like you're gonna have every morning you're gonna have an individual workout for about an hour and a half. So first 45 minutes you'll lift, next 45 minutes you'll do skill work on the court, and then you'll have this long break of about 4 or 5 hours before you have your team practice at night. So in that 4 or 5 hours, you got to figure out what you're gonna do with your time. And in a lot of ways, it's almost fortunate that there's COVID right now because everything's in lockdown here. So you don't have that ability to go sightsee or go all over the place. So in a way, it's kind of lucky. And then at the same time, you're kind of bummed out because you're in this foreign country, but you're not really getting to fully experience it. So everything, I think the first about month, I've been here for about 2 months now. So the first month was really a big adjustment. And then now I've kind of settled into a routine and it's much more enjoyable for me now.
You miss a lot of the stuff that you obviously can obtain here and you can't get there.
Food,
like
man. Yeah, food's a big thing. Yeah. So we kind of get through our system, you're getting food made for you every day, but you're not really getting to pick for yourself. And then maybe like once or twice a week you'll go because you want to keep a good eye on your body too. So you're not wanting to eat everything, not go eat all kinds of not really unhealthy food all the time. So that's been a really big thing. The food from Hawaii is like the biggest thing I can miss. It's I'd say it's the food here overall is probably a little bit healthier because you don't have a ton of salt thrown onto everything. I think like I'm realizing a lot of stuff in Hawaii was. But at the same time, you have the opposite of that where you're not getting a ton of flavor either. So you're kind of just eating for like substance and calories to keep your body healthy.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure once you head back, it's you'll be getting into those plate
Oh,
lunches or whatever.
I got a long list already. I got locomocos, I got plate lunches, I need poke, I got to go to Tamura's and get a full slab of pipi kaula. Yeah, I got a full list already made out.
But that's cool. But I think I'm from when I first saw you in whether it was on the basketball court or the volleyball court, I knew you had the work ethic, and I think like you've from when I first met you, I think you've definitely grown into being much more articulate and a lot of those things, and I'm real I'm real stoked on that for you, and
Yeah, thank you.
what is that your journey and what you were able to accomplish, what kind of message do you have for not only kids that are coming up from Kalaheo or the OIA, but just in general from Hawaii? Like what's sort of your advice or kind of like just like insight can you give to kids from Hawaii that they want to obviously play and continue to play, but obviously the NBA may not be the answer, but sort of talk about your journey and what that sort of meant to what that can sort of mean for Hawaii kids that are trying to come up.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of a big thing that I've learned throughout my journey, like I said, I went to school in Oregon out of high school, then to California to junior college, and then ended up back at University of Hawaii Hilo. So I've been at a lot of different levels and I've seen a lot of different things. A big thing that I think for kids coming up from Hawaii is if you want something, you got to go out and you got to take it, because you're from a small island in the middle of nowhere. Whenever you say, oh, I'm a basketball player from Hawaii, they say, Hawaii, like they're going to question you. They're going to say, I've never heard of anybody playing basketball from Hawaii, So anything you want, you got to go out and you got to take it. You got to prove that you deserve to be there. Another thing when it comes to for local hoopers, when it comes to going to college or anything like that, a big thing is try your best not to be naive. That's something that's obviously easier said than done, but don't mistake, first of all, the people that you surround yourself with is a really big thing. And the people that you're going to for advice is a really big thing as well. I think for me personally, there was not necessarily I put trust in the wrong people, but if you want to get to the college level, or say, for instance, you want to earn a scholarship, an actual scholarship versus just getting a spot on a team, a big thing that it sounds kind of simple, but if you're around 5 monkeys, you're going to turn into the 6th monkey, or if you're around 5 lions, you're going to turn into the 6th lion. So if you're going to people for advice who have no experience on the topic or have no background, you're probably not going to get the best advice when it comes to that. And so that's one point I'd say is don't be naive, and also realize that when it comes to playing in college, like I said, when it comes to getting an actual scholarship and not just like, oh, we're going to give you a spot on our team as like the 13th man. When it comes to actually getting a scholarship, you have to realize that there's financial implications with everything too. So that's something that I think I didn't really take as seriously at first, because you got to realize that your coach, who's a professional, that's his career, if you're a player for him, you're an investment. And so if you're an investment, like any type of business, if that investment's failing, they're going to have to go somewhere else to bring in that income. And so there's no time for you to go there and be like wishy-washy, dip your toe in the water. If you're going to go in and you're going to try and do this, you have to produce, or they're going to find somebody else that'll do that. And I think that's a big thing, is for Hawaii kids going to the mainland or something like that, there's a big adjustment in figuring out how serious basketball really is. So that's another piece of my advice, is don't be naive, surround yourself with people who really know what they're talking about. And then another thing too, I watched this other podcast with Derek Lowe, and Kyle Pape was on it. And Kyle said something really good, I think, was he said, if you really want to do this and pursue basketball like that, you have to make sure that you really, really love the game. Because if you're not, you're going to get left behind. Because if you don't have actual passion for playing, or if you don't have actual passion for the work side of it, you're not going to be successful, and you're going to end up really miserable. Because when it comes to playing in college, much like at the professional level, it's basically like a job. You have to realize that you're going to have your classes throughout the day. You'll probably have a workout in the morning before, then you're going to have your team practice maybe after, or switch that direction. And then on top of that, you're going to have study hall, which we had at UH Hilo. We had study hall 6 hours a week at least. And then on top of that, you're going to have to do your actual schoolwork aside from that, and then any type of social life you're going to want as well. So if you're going to college and you're saying your main objectives in college are to really have fun, or for the experience of it, I would say if you're not 100% bought in and you don't have 100% love and actual passion for the game, you're kind of wasting your time. And there's nothing wrong with that, but being honest with yourself is like a really big thing, I think, when it comes to playing. And then I think also there's a sense of, especially coming from Hawaii, you're going to want to put on for everybody, and so that when you go home, you can you know, kind of have this maybe like reputation that you used to have. But if you're not fully bought into that, or maybe you're doing it because your family members want you to play, or because your friends think it's cool for you to be playing, then that's another situation where you yourself, you're probably going to be miserable, and you might spend 4 years playing college basketball or something like that, and you're never going to really get the results that you wanted or anything like that, because it's really not what you wanted to be doing in the first place.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
those are my pieces of advice, I guess. Just make sure that you're committed and you really want to be doing it too.